My name is Sharon Mortensen, and I serve as President CEO at Midland Area Community Foundation. And we're pleased to do these calls in connection with the long-term recovery group in Midland County. The purpose of the purpose of these calls is to educate the community about the work of the long-term recovery group and aspects of flood recovery. And I will say that really these calls are designed to make sure that we're communicating the incredible work that is going on when we think about our long-term recovery group. That group meets on an every other week basis. There are subcommittees meeting either weekly or on a regular basis, and incredible work going on in our community through the long-term recovery group. Well, today's topic is Sanford recovery, and special thanks to Dolores Porty, the village president for the village of Sanford, Teresa Quintana, one of the founders of the Sanford Strong Group, and Katie Vocal, disaster case manager. They will all be joining in this conversation today as we talk about recovery in the Sanford area. We've done a number of these calls, and you can find the recordings at reliefmidland.org or midlandfoundation.org. So reliefmidland.org or midlandfoundation.org. So we have one that talks about the long-term recovery work and how it's set up. We had one with FEMA, one on mental well-being, flood recovery for businesses, city and county rebuilding and housing codes, case management and volunteering, your community recovery or your flood recovery dollars at work. So various topics. And this ties into the long-term recovery group. And there are two funds in our community that are helping with the work for recovery through our flood recovery funds, both at United Way of Midland County with their Rise Together Fund and Midland Area Community Foundation with our flood recovery fund. So today's call will be recorded. You're welcome to post questions in the chat, and we will handle those at the end of the call today. And just to give a little background, although I don't know that this is really needed with many on this call today, but 9 months ago on May 19th, 2 dams failed, and the resulting flooding was devastating to this region, but specifically to the village of Sanford right there with the failure of the Sanford Dam. But what's remarkable, and you'll hear about today, is the way that the community of Sanford came together to help one another and to recover from this flood. And our 3 guests are going to tell this story today. Each one will introduce themselves, and then we're going to look at this from the perspective of what's happened in the past, what's going on right now, and what are plans for the future. So I'm really pleased to welcome Dolores, Teresa, and Katie. So thank you, ladies, and I'll turn it over to Dolores.
I'm Dolores Porty. I'm the Village of Sanford president, and we were asked to speak a little bit about the history of what happens in our group. So I graduated from Coleman High School in 1978. I've lived in Sanford for 23 years. I've gotten business degrees from MSU and from U of M Flint. I am on the village board since 2012. I've been the village president since 2018. I retired from Dow Chemical in 2016 as the global accounts payable leader. In my role in the village, I'm also the village enforcement officer by appointment. We have applied for grants such as the 2017 hazard mitigation grant, which was approximately $650,000 to help buy people out of flood zone A from the 2017 flood. And we've since had applied for new playground equipment and received a DNR grant for approximately $200,000. That playground equipment was scheduled to be installed in May of 2020. That grant was put on hold and is still available to us. So this is the historical piece of the village of Sanford and my engagement with the village. And from here, Teresa Quintana will talk about Sanford Strong's history.
Hi, my name is Teresa Quintana. I'm one of the co-founders of Sanford Strong, and I was born and raised in Sanford, and that's kind of where I've garnered my compassion for the community. Would you like me to talk about Sanford Strong's history now, Sharon? Okay, So the night of the dam failure, we were evacuated, and Emily and I were talking late that night, and she decided to start the Facebook group so that people would have a resource to serve the purpose of communicating about the dam failure. So we began by providing a space where residents could share real-time needs and information before the floodwaters had receded. From there, we began the cleanup phase, and we helped connect people in need of help to the hundreds of residents that were volunteering their time, resources, heavy equipment, trucks, and manpower. We helped to muck out homes and get humidifiers and fans for people to begin drying out and hauling the debris to the landfill. It was a remarkable effort by the entire community.
So okay. So that last slide that was just up briefly, it just kind of overviewed what Teresa just said. But my name is Katie Vocal, and I was a disaster case manager in the 2017 flood incident. And there were two of us at that time for the 2017 flood that occurred in June. And during our year of service, that we were able to support 105 clients, and the resources that were available for assistance for those 105 clients was about $900,000. When the incident took place in May of 2020, myself and the other case manager from 2017, along with two other disaster case managers, were hired to come in and work alongside our community to support residents in Midland County. So UMCOR is who put up a grant to bring our first two case managers in to kind of help sort and vet survivors and their unmet needs. And then thanks to the generosity of the community, two other positions were paid for through funding through the Community Foundation and other resources such as Midland United Way. So currently for 2020, there are, like I said, 4 case managers, and we have 2 construction managers that are actively working in Sanford. One is a paid position, and the other one is strictly a volunteer. And like I said, we vet clients because our goal is to get people back safely into their homes. And so we want to make sure that primary living spaces are safe and available for them to move in. So we help with bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, rooms that are necessary for people to live and be safe in a home. A big thing that also has occurred is water sources and wells and things like that. So in 2020, we are assisting homeowners with making sure that they have a good supply of water coming into their home. Part of our process as case managers is that we also have to work alongside our federal agencies. So we help assist with FEMA applications, appeals, and then also we help clients with applications for an SBA loan. So working alongside FEMA, the maximum grant that homeowners were allotted, if FEMA deemed that it was a total loss, was $35,500. And to lose your whole home and only receive $35,500 is not much to work with. And that's why then we look at an SBA loan as an opportunity to come in and give homeowners another resource to rebuild and put their homes back together. The grant that FEMA supplies, they do give you a few stipulations. One is that if your home is in a floodplain, you have to, in order to receive their money, is you have to take out flood insurance if it's in a floodplain. And the other stipulation is that if the damage to your home is 50% or more of its assessed value, you either must raise or elevate your home, or you have to fill in your lowest level to make it above the floodplain level. So those are the two stipulations. Some homeowners, did not receive the maximum grant and are not in the floodplain. So these stipulations do not apply to them. So a couple things about the SBA loan. Homeowners could take out an SBA loan if they were approved for $25,000. And that is called their unsecured loan, which means there's no lien placed on their property. But if they took out an amount that was greater than $25,000, there was a lien that was placed on their home to guarantee repayment of the loan to the SBA. So once the case managers work alongside homeowners to help them navigate FEMA and SBA, there's a lot of times things that occur that make them not meet the requirements set up by the federal government. And so that's when case management really comes into play. Is we start by having our case managers go into the home to give us an idea of how much a true rebuild would be. So our case managers and construction managers go into a home, we get the scope of work from our construction managers, and also they give us their estimate on a rebuild. And so once that's identified, the case managers look back within the community to see if there are resources that would be able to support parts of the rebuild. And then lastly, when we've kind of exhausted all the local resources, the case managers will bring the funding need before the funding committee, which is a part of this long-term disaster recovery group. And so the only part that the case managers share with the funding committee is these risk assessment indicators. And what those do is they kind of let the funders know a little bit of the background of the homeowners, but not enough that it would breach any confidentiality or let them know too much specific information about them. But these are the indicators that we present along with the financial need that is necessary to get homeowners back into their homes safely and securely. And here's Dolores to talk about current events in Sanford.
Thank you, Katie. In 2020, after the flood, we applied for a 2020 hazard mitigation grant with approximately 19 properties in it that are in flood zone A. That if the grant is approved, those properties will be purchased for pre-flood market value. I'm a spokesperson for village projects that are in place and in the future. I've been the focal point for debris pickup, FEMA grants, donor equipment, time and materials related to the village. We're still managing the 2017 hazard mitigation grant because although we applied for it in 2017, it wasn't funded until January 2020. So we are still working on that grant. Working with community leaders to secure support for residents rebuilding and considering future housing options. So working very closely with Katie Vocal and the long-term recovery group to help residents who are still in the process of rebuilding, and then helping us look for future options for people to return to the village. Approximately 36 properties were totally demolished, and we have at least 16 properties that are buildable properties. So looking for a way to rebuild those properties and make them affordable for people who've already suffered a lot of financial loss. About the 2020 hazard mitigation grant, just to give you an order of magnitude, that's about a $1.2 million grant. At the same time, I'm the focal point for ordinances, village ordinances. So as people are working to rebuild, they want to know things about signs, whether it's commercial or residential, whether it can be a duplex or a quadplex. So there's a lot of questions from the businesses and residents about rebuilding. I interact a lot with Teresa from Sanford Strong. One of the most recent visible is helping them store drywall and dispense drywall to people who needed it. I work on public events such as our Christmas tree and our Christmas decorations for downtown Sanford. We had a drive-through Halloween event, and in September we had a small sesquicentennial event. We were 150 years old. I'm an interface for the news. Midland Daily News and the TV stations are regularly interested in the progress of the rebuilding of Sanford, which store is going to open when and how things are coming. I interacted with MDOT, the Federal Highway Administration, the Midland County Road Commission to get Saginaw Road rebuilt. And there is a second part to that project because that's a temporary fix and there will be a longer term look at the bridge and more work to be done on the bridge. We are doing a lot of work on getting the silt out of storm sewers. So if you see different work being done on street corners where we found silt and storm sewers from the flood. I have 14 FEMA projects that I applied for and have been approved. One is related to rebuilding the village park. So we have a bid process out to hire a contractor to do that. So there are lots of things going on behind the scenes in rebuilding the village and making sure that things are put back in place. Our most recent project that we applied for with FEMA was to fix the downtown clock. Funny thing is, I didn't originally include it because I didn't think of it being a public property. And then when we were all talking about how to get it fixed and how much it would cost, it occurred to me that it is a publicly owned piece of property. So currently working on getting the clock and the lights replaced. So there's lots to do. I'm also working with the chamber and the business owners to try and bring new business to Sanford and actually reaching out to businesses in Midland to see if they will partner with us. One future event we have is something like the dry dock in Bay City, where a brewery or company will sponsor it and nonprofit organizations can run it and make money from that event, similar to what they do at Loons, where nonprofits can run the concession stand and make some money. So we have a lot in the works right now, but that's kind of the general gist of what the current situation is in the village. Thank you. And Teresa's going to talk about what's currently happening with Sanford Strong.
So after the cleanup phase, we transitioned into the rebuilding phase, and that's where our community currently stands, both residentially and commercially. It's really interesting to see that there are so many different people in different places with flood recovery. And so one of the things that we're working on currently is we sort of liaison residents to the long-term recovery group. So Dolores, myself, and Emily and Katie, we meet every week, and a couple other leaders in the community. And we meet every week, and we continue to find people that are still down to the studs. So we submit new cases to the long-term recovery group on residents' behalf, and then we continue to follow up in our weekly meeting to see everybody's progress. So like I said, it seems like every week we continue to find people that still are in total need of rebuilding. But then every week it seems like we're starting to have more and more success stories. And so it's really rewarding to see it all coming together.
Yeah, the partnership between long-term recovery and Sanford Strong has really been incredible. To be able to meet weekly and have, you know, firsthand accounts from this group and partner then with a case manager has really, like Teresa said, it's amazing to see within just a few weeks progress for people where they felt kind of hopeless and kind of stuck. So the numbers on this slide are numbers that represent just the Sanford community. So that includes the village of Sanford, Edenville Township, and also Jerome Township. It has nothing to do with City of Midland or any other communities. This is just the Sanford numbers. And so currently between the 4 case managers, there are 77 clients. And like I said, we first started with FEMA appeals and SBA processes. And then after those were exhausted, we've presented 29 different funding asks specifically for Sanford community residents. And they can range from, you know, a lower dollared item like a water heater, and then all the way up to helping assist with a total rebuild. And so what that looks like is, it's not that the funding is putting forth the entire amount for a rebuild of a home. The homeowners are bringing, you know, their FEMA dollars plus maybe an SBA loan. And then where they're falling short is where the funding committee comes in and says, we see that this is where your shortfall is. We can partner with you to help with the rebuild. And we always make sure that the homeowners are actively involved in their recovery, which means that, you know, as we move forward and we start to look at people coming into their homes to assist in the rebuild, from volunteer groups to keep our costs lower or to contracting out, we allow the homeowners to be involved with every step of the process to make sure that they're comfortable with who's entering their home and who will be around their families. Another resource that we have in 2020 that has been different than what we had in 2017 is we have a designated resource manager. And that's a position that currently is funded by United Way. And her name is Bree Schuyler, and she organizes all in-kind donations, keeps them, you know, keeps us all up to date with how much material is available. And so when we do a rebuild project, if we're able to access the donated materials first, that cuts the cost of the rebuild significantly. And then Bree also helps us get all the volunteers that are needed to help the community. And, you know, a volunteer, I want everybody to remember this, doesn't mean that you have to know how to swing a hammer or you have to be able to be very skilled. We have volunteers that are currently helping pick up meals from curbside at senior services and taking it to our survivors who unfortunately are having to stay in hotels due to lack of housing that's available in the area. So, you know, a volunteer can be someone who for an hour will take the time to pick up a meal, drop it off at a hotel, and then get a meal count for the following day. And so Bree has tracked those hours. And as you can see, just for the village, it's almost, you know, 20,000 hours that have been logged just for Sanford. And the in-kind donations that have already been dispersed to our Sanford community is almost $75,000. And then when we do go to the funding committee, the amount of funds that currently, and this number changes weekly because the funding meetings are on Wednesday of every week. So last week's totals are in here, not this current yesterday's meeting, but the amount was $684,705.25 to support the rebuild projects, raising of homes. And then the other huge impact that the funding dollars have been able to provide is the furnishings of a home in a box kit. And if you click to the next slide, Sharon, that will show everybody all the items that are included in a home in a box kit. But what we found when we first started meeting with the funding group is we have renters and we have homeowners who were both impacted. And the largest thing they have in common, obviously, is they lost all contents of their home. And so originally we were coming before funding and we were partnering with a great local furniture store, Dan, the mattress man. He was giving us a great deal to help furnish homes and renters' homes. Because when you move to a new place and you have no belongings, you know, we were having families with kids sleeping in sleeping bags on floors and things like that. So we partnered with a charity that does this home in a box kit. It's St. Vinny, I think it's St. Vinny de Paul. And they offer all these materials for about $2,500. And what that does is it gives the homeowners a whole entire package where they can take to their new location, be it if it's a rental property or if they were able or had to move to a new location. It gives them the beds that are necessary, the furniture, and even things, you know, that maybe we wouldn't think of as people who haven't been through an event like this. You need towels and you need silverware. And so St. Vinny, they thought of everything. They put together these kits and we ended up ordering 50. And what we do as case managers is when we meet with a client, and if they are a renter and let's say this is the greatest need that they have right now, is we meet with them and we see the space that they are moving into. And as soon as we vet the need, then we're able to contact Bree, and she goes to the warehouse and meets the family, and they're able to bring their own loaded, truck to load, and they can take the kit home and be able to move right into their rental or to their new home and be able to just settle in and kind of get some normalcy back. So that is a huge resource that we were able to partner with. And we, I think I said currently there are 7 slated for Sanford, with 3 pending just a home visit. And so that's just kind of currently what has been going on with the case management side. So I'll turn it back over to Dolores.
I'm just going to add something to that really quick before we go to Dolores. Another resource that we have in the community is that Emily and I started a project fund through the Midland Area Community Foundation. It's called the Greater Sanford Lake Area Residential Rebuilding Project. It's a mouthful of a name. But some of the things that we've done with that is, like, for example, we had the drywall drive and other rebuilding supplies that we have been able to purchase for people with that donor money. And in the event also that, like, if the long-term recovery group is not able to help with some kind of residence assistance, whether it be certain circumstances or not, we're able to fill the gaps in with that fund as well. So that we can just better serve our people.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Teresa. Before we switch over, Katie, there's a question in the chat box about the home in the box. The question is, I take it that it's $2,500 per kit, and what is the location and address of St. Vincent de Paul? Is that something you can comment on before I move on?
Yeah, so St. Vincent, we received the 50 kits. So we have them here locally. So you do not need to contact St. Vincent de Paul. The kits were already purchased through the funding committee to be able to be dispersed into Midland County. And so if you know of a survivor that is in need of a kit, you can call that phone number that Emily put in the chat at the beginning, and we will connect you with a case manager to vet your need and to be able to assist you moving forward with a kit.
Thanks, Katie.
Yep.
And there was another question about what kind of help we're getting related to, politicians at the federal and state level, and what kind of work we're doing to acquire grants, and then the help from the governor. So Annette Glenn from the House of Representatives talks with us regularly, and part of what she did is she got $1 million from the state of Michigan allocated to the Sanford project, and around $4 million to the greater Midland County from the state of Michigan to help with some of the expenses. So for example, when we get FEMA money, most of it is 75-25. So if we get $1 million for the Village Park, for example, $250,000 is expected to come from the local community, either through in-kind donations, where different contractors will do some of the work for free, and or cash donations. So when it comes to US, Congressman Molinar met with us recently to continue to keep us connected to the USDA Rural Development, because they have monies to help rebuild communities in rural areas. And he's also in Washington talking about how to alleviate some of the cost of the rebuilding of the dams so that it becomes more affordable. So there are a lot of politicians interacting with us. When it comes to the governor's office, there's a local focal point, Dylan Hellis. Just yesterday, I was invited to a meeting to speak with the Lieutenant Governor about issues that continue to be at hand in the Midland County area. So to answer your question, there are a lot of political connections being made to help with the cost of the rebuild. I was just looking up my notes about that. So, for example, even though we didn't have a laundromat before the flood, there is a request from people to have a laundromat, and or we didn't have senior living like Riverside and Midland, or like senior living in Coleman. But as we rebuild, people are interested in having some senior living available. So we're talking to all these different agencies that may have that kind of funding available so that we can grow in the process of this rebuild. So I hope that answers your question. I'll look back in the chat box in just a second to see again to see if that was complete. But yes, there are lots of politicians. And just a side note, I was retired for the last 5 years from Dow. So this is kind of a sideline thing I'm doing in my retirement. I was mainly, prior to the flood, we fixed the asphalt on roads and we put in new playground equipment, but nothing as extensive as what we're doing right now. So it's quite a steep learning curve and lots of balls in the air. But through the long-term recovery group, I did want to mention with Katie that we're getting a lot of help for residents in Sanford and in Midland County to help rebuild their house, and Habitat is engaged through the long-term recovery group too. So we have 2 or 3 Habitat projects that are in play in Sanford. And I think I saw one recently advertised that was in Midland that long-term recovery group is working on. So they've really brought a lot of resources to the community to help residential rebuild. So that's been a lifesaver. And so other things that we're looking at is attracting businesses. Like I mentioned earlier, I proactively contact businesses. I actually do get the Midland Daily News hard copy, and I read about who's doing something in Midland, and I contact them to see if it's something they might. Just 1 second, some reason, there we go. When we rebuild the park, people would like to see a dog walk there, and maybe another entranceway for the fishing area down by the dam. We voted to reopen Center Street to through traffic a few years back. It was closed to one way for a fishing pier. Well, there isn't fishing happening there right now, and there's a lot of traffic in town for the rebuilds. So we're also looking at the space where the Christmas trees were, the south side of the rail trail, and looking at having like food trucks and concerts in the park, maybe an ice skating rink. So there are lots of things we're looking forward to in the future of Sanford. So while we're waiting for the dam to be rebuilt, we have the rail trail here, we have cross-country skiing, we have mountain biking, we still have fishing south side of the dam. We want to get the ballparks back up and running so that we can have the baseball seasons here again starting in 2022. So there are lots of great things happening in Sanford. And I want to make sure people understand that we also connect with people all over Midland County and Gladwin County. So it is a Sanford-centric project because that's where we reside, but where we see synergies or things we can do to help other people, we all are acting as that conduit. Sanford Strong, myself, Katie, and other groups that are working for the rebuild. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katie to wrap up the long-term recovery group.
Yeah, to add to what Dolores was saying and what Teresa also said, it takes a whole community. And, we've mentioned a few resources that have really opened up and been just willing to help. Everybody's wants the same thing for our community. We want people back safe, secure, enjoying where they're living. And, we mentioned Habitat, but I also like to mention, with the shortage of housing, Home to Stay has been amazing and trying to assist us in whatever way possible to get people into not just short-term housing, but long-term solutions for housing. We talked about Habitat, but also senior services with just providing meals to people who don't have a kitchen currently to be able to cook. And, it's not healthy to eat out all the time. So providing the healthy meals. Our local churches have reached out not only to, to meet people's needs, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally. And our emergency manager, anytime she can connect any of us with a resource through state or local or even federal government, she's quick to share or to introduce us so that we can work together. And that's really what this is. You know, DHS, our local DHS, and our Salvation Army. I mean, I'm just listing a few. I know I'm missing people, but you know, this group comes together all for the purpose of bettering our community and making sure that people are staying and able to stay and have help to assist them in their recovery. So I want to make sure that, you know, funding isn't always the best and quickest result. There's also, you know, all these other needs that people have. So that's why ideally this partnership with Long-Term Recovery and Sanford Strong has been phenomenal, because it's knowing people who are on the ground. They're the boots on the ground locally, and I'm local too, but I am not in Sanford. I don't see what they see every day. So their interactions with me, and then I can bring it to even a larger audience, is really what has been the big push behind all the success that has occurred, probably, I would say, within the last 4 to 5 months. And so I know that right now, the future is that our original time period for case managers to be able to be in this position was only from July 15th was our official start date, and our official end date was supposed to be July 14th of 2021. But what we've done is we've just asked for extensions of that grant so we can continue the work and not have to just stop because the time limit came up. And another thing that's really supported us being able to extend is we were actually awarded a grant from FEMA that allows us to bring in additional supplemental help to work alongside the current case managers that are in place. So what this means is the federal government is allowing us to hire more case managers to get more people into homes, to identify more unmet needs. And we also can hire more volunteer coordinators to help get more people to our area to do the builds at a lesser rate. And then we also can hire more construction assessors, managers to get into the homes to give us the scope of work and the idea of what a rebuild costs. So that grant, we're actually currently working on to start to bring in that additional support staff. And then the third thing that we're doing, and we just started last week, and it will help us as we move into the future, is SVSU, so Saginaw Valley State University, Central Michigan University, and Michigan State all have offered us interns. And we have currently 11 interns from the 3 separate universities that are helping us, because we have phone lists of about across, not just for Sanford and Midland, but we have a phone list for Saginaw County, Aranac, Iosco counties, and Gladwin County, with thousands of people that haven't even reached out for case management yet. So interns are starting to make those phone calls, and what they're doing is just kind of a blanket call to see if the survivors recovered, if they have unmet needs, and then they're able to take that little bit of information and give it to a case manager then to reach out and do an official screening and an official vetting of needs. So that's what's happening currently with case management, and how we're going to, you know, continue into the second year of this process. So like I said, our first year officially ends July 14th, but we're not going to stop and wait for you know, funding. We've already been approved to continue into July of 2022. So case management is not going to be here and gone. It's here for a lot longer. So if you're finding people that are still in need, please call that number, and we're happy to reach out to them.
So another way that you can, so there's a couple different ways that you can contact the long-term recovery group. The number that Katie's referring to is 989-874-3000. And you are instructed to leave a voicemail, and then somebody will contact you. Another option that you have is you can contact myself, Emily Rickards, or Dolores, or Angela Cole, and let us know if you know somebody that's in need, or if you're in need, what your needs are, and we will present that to the long-term recovery group during our weekly meeting as well. So if you're more comfortable reaching out to one of us, don't be afraid to.
Thanks, Teresa. There's a question in the chat box about the Sanford Rebuild Fund, and if it goes to the Centennial Museum. Right now, they haven't requested any funding from the Village of Sanford, but I know the museum has their own way to donate. But if it's something you want to donate to, please feel free to contact me after the meeting or contact the Centennial Museum. They do a lot of really great things for Sanford. They have the whole light set up at Christmas time. They put on the annual September celebration for Sanford. So yes, they did have a lot of water in the museum and did a lot of work to drag out a lot of those artifacts. So thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, a lot of that work was done by the people that work at the museum and then volunteers. That was a big volunteer effort from my understanding to get that restored, and they did a beautiful job.
Yeah, they did. The other thing I wanted to mention is, along with the long-term recovery group, Sanford Strong, and other donors, a lot of area churches are still contacting us and donating toward the rebuild. Wherever there's a gray space with an individual that they can help with, many churches are still engaged in helping us. In fact, we're doing an assessment right now of some of the properties that are distressed and what it might take to rebuild on those, and they're looking at helping us with that. In addition, the long-term recovery group has given some focus too to using local contractors where they can. So as they're helping residents rebuild, they have a list from all of us of people in the local area that are contractors that are interested in helping, and or maybe were hurt by COVID and need some of the business. So it's really a great community effort where we're all trying to help each other as we go forward.
I want to say I have a few questions for all of you here. And I did want to just repeat that disaster case manager number because I think that's so important. I will say, however, if you cannot find it, if you call 211, they will connect you as well. So that's another way to get there. But it's 989-374-8000. So just so you've got that handy.
You can search for it in Sanford Strong too if you utilize the search within group tool. If you type in case management, that number will come up a million times.
Perfect. Thank you. And as you've heard, as our speakers today have shared, you can see the incredible collaboration that has taken place in our community. And when you think about the long-term recovery group, you know, Katie mentioned so many of the groups and more. It's just, there are so many coming together, and the way that the community has come together to help, but it takes people that just are willing to work tirelessly. And you've got three of them that you've just heard from on this call with Dolores, Teresa, and Katie. So I want to point that out. And recovery, and as Katie talked about, extending the time that our disaster case managers will be working, recovery takes a long time. What happened in a day's time takes years to rebuild. And so one of the questions, so it's a long process. And the other thing is, it's a complicated process that no one has ever been through this before in this way, right? And so the comparison I often hear people do, it's like building the plane as you're flying, or, you know, I've heard a variety of different analogies, but it really is figuring it out as you go. So one of the things that I wanted to pose to all of you is, knowing this is a really long process, what are you doing to help keep morale high among residents of the area during this rebuilding process?
So we do a lot of that. That's a community effort too. And so like when I speak for Sanford Strong, it's not just Teresa and Emily, it's the whole community. So like an example of, you know, when we were still in our cleanup phase in the very beginning of the rebuilding phase, we had some stand-up residents like Angela Cole and Christy McDonald that did the meal program where they provided hot meals, very generous and tireless. In addition to that, we had sort of an off-grid Founders Day celebration. We had residents that organized the Halloween event. We had a drive-through Halloween event. We were able to get people meals for Thanksgiving as well. I know Angela, again, was a huge collaboration with getting frozen turkeys and meals to people. We had one of the most amazing things was a teacher at Meridian, Mrs. Larges, Sarah. She organized this really generous Christmas program where they sponsored between 50 or 60 families and were able to provide them with their Christmas gifts for the year. And so that's kind of an ongoing thing that we do. And we're still kind of planning some fun things for to the morale.
Great, thank you. I know you cut out just a little bit, Teresa, with the internet. And as you're talking about these things, I know, can you talk about the Christmas lighting and what that meant to the community? Because I know there were cars backed up to, I think, almost 2:30 trying to get into Sanford. Talk just a little bit about that and maybe what that meant to the community.
Everybody loved it. That was Sanford Shines. That was Dolores's project more than it was mine. So I will actually turn this question over to Dolores.
Well, that was very exciting. And it started out with the idea of having some lights downtown and then lighting up the south side of the rail trail where so many homes were lost. I think we thought we might have 4 to 6 trees, and we ended up with about 62 trees. And people all over the community wanting to contribute and put up a memorial tree. So it was absolutely awesome. A couple days before, we found out from Bill Schutte, he wanted to bring the Santa train from Midland and Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and it just rolled from there. Then the Michigan State Police got a hold of Annette Glenn and wanted to be part of it. It turned into a large parade, and you're right, Sharon. People waited in their cars for up to an hour and a half to come through. There was a lady that donated Christmas cookies. There was a guy that came with his car all decorated with reindeer and a float. I never knew of anybody who just brought their own float to a Christmas parade. So that was pretty fun. So it was very encouraging and engaging for the community. And so Teresa's right. We have other things in the pipeline. We plan to do the fireworks in town this year. They used to be done out at the church grounds. And in that July 4th timeframe, we plan to have some things there. Like I mentioned, these kind of food truck and concert things. So it's been a lot of fun to engage at this level with the community and see how many people come out and support the community. Even the day of the Christmas tree lighting, we had carolers who wanted to come and carol and musicians who wanted to come and play music. So it's been just a lot of fun, and there's more to come as we rebuild. We are putting together a memorial for May 19th around 5:30 or 6 p.m. With the War Memorial with Kim Burgess. I'm a little bit emotional. I can't believe a year is coming up already. But we have a lot in the pipeline to keep morale high. We just replaced a lot of windows downtown that were broken out and boarded up. We're rebuilding a lot of homes. So I think people will see a lot of construction here this summer and just bringing new businesses, even if they're food trucks, temporary dry dock kind of things downtown. So I think there's a lot in the pipeline, and with help with Teresa and people like Anna Marilette and Megan Clark, there are a lot of community members that are organizing these kind of events coming up. So expecting some more to come.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The Saginaw Road rebuild, connecting that section of Saginaw Road was really critical. Can you talk about why that was so important to the community?
Yeah, Sharon, it's really important to the community because we need the traffic to come through to help our businesses thrive and survive. And it was a really long commute for certain people going to work that was costing them extra gas mileage in a difficult time. We have a lot of construction going on in Sanford, so we needed people who were working on that construction to be able to have a direct route. So it's really the lifeblood of a community to have through traffic. And so it was really important to get that road opened. And also for morale reasons, the road was like broken in a lot of pieces. And it's a constant reminder of the flood. So just having something repaired is really awesome. And I made the comment, I think we have more traffic going through here than we ever did prior to the flood. So that's its own new nuance to have that amount of traffic in town, but it's great to see everyone coming through. So it was really important, and the Federal Highway Administration paid for 100% of that because it was emergency work. But when we look at the permanent work, the village will need to pay for about 20% of whatever that work is and yet to come.
Another question that came in, Dolores, will the May 19th memorial also be when the war memorial is going to reopen?
That's our understanding from Kim Burgess. That's their target date, is that we will hold something at the War Memorial down by the Sanford trailhead. That's our current plan, Sharon.
Another question for all of you. What are the greatest challenges that you face as you look to the future? So I know there'll be several different perspectives here, but what are the greatest challenges you face as you look toward the future when we talk about Sanford recovery and rebuilding?
Well, I think this couldn't happen at the worst time, you know, in tandem with COVID-19 challenges that we've been facing. So, you know, as a result of COVID-19 challenges, we've got building supplies are at an all-time high, you know, cost-wise. And then it's just more difficult when, you know, people have to stay 6 feet apart, and there's so many different restrictions with what we can do that are unusual if this would have happened at any other time. So I would say it's still the COVID challenge, is, you know, not really knowing when this is going to be over and when we can resume back to normal. But I think we would have come a lot farther if we hadn't been suffering from the dam failure in tandem with that.
This is Dolores. I think in the case of the village, it's going to be a challenge with funding. So while FEMA funded approximately 14 projects for the rebuild of Sanford, as I mentioned earlier, 25% of those costs are expected to be covered by the local municipality. The upside is the majority of the work that we've done so far has been done with contractors who have donated their labor. They've had retirees come and run their equipment. It's with people donating their time. So it's from money from the Midland Area Community Foundation and donations directly to the village. So I'm not worried about it, but it will be a challenge to cover the percentage that is intended for the local municipality to pay as you're rebuilding a community. But I feel that along, somebody just put in the chat box, and I appreciate it, volunteers that come also go towards our 25%. So it's really important when people volunteer, because we can show that as part of the labor towards that 25%. That's why some people, we had them sign in, we have to show what they worked on. But I think it's just going to be the financial challenge, but I'm so inspired by the community we live in, because whenever we have a financial challenge, it seems like somebody shows up with their equipment, their people, their volunteers, whatever we need to get us to the next phase. So the majority of the cleanup work done in Sanford, probably 95% of it, was done by volunteer people, equipment, and cash through the foundations. And so FEMA said they've never seen anything like it before. So we're very blessed to have this kind of a community to live in, because we're much further ahead because of what people have contributed.
And then I'll just add my little 2 cents to it. I feel like for case management, the most difficult task is identifying people who are still hurting. A lot of times, especially in our community of Midland County, people don't want to ask for help, and people don't want others in their community to know that they're hurting and still needing help. So they just kind of are dealing on their own with it. And so that's why I think it's going to be great to have all these interns making phone calls where we can connect one-on-one over the phone. And then, you know, like I said, the work we do is totally confidential. People will not know, you know, how you're getting support, but it's just, the nice thing is the interns will make those calls, we'll be identifying them, and then this grant to bring in more workers to assist more survivors on their recovery is really, this community compared to Gladwin, Saginaw, Iosco, and Aranac, you would hate to say 2017 was like our test drive, but it really was. The way our community was able to pick up and start supporting each other is really a huge asset to the 2020 flood, because we already knew, what do we need to get in place? How do we start moving on this right away? So we're kind of a little bit ahead. And I know I hate to say that because it's been 9 months and people are still hurting, but because of the quick forming of all these, you know, groups, we were able to start. And I hope that by, you know, having a meeting like this, we're able to share the contact information so we can identify more people and help everybody, not just the few we find, but everybody that needs help will get the help that they need.
And just to follow up on that, would you all like to share again? I know, Kate, if you want to share that disaster case manager number, and also what you encouraged. I just, not to overemphasize, but I think it's really important that we connect people with the resources that are available, and that really opens the door. So if you want to share that, and then again, just what you encourage people to do if they need help.
So I'm going to let Teresa share the number because she actually has it memorized better than I do. So I'm going to have her share it. But what I would encourage people to do is, if you know of a neighbor or a family member that is still in need of assistance, you can reach out to the number I'm going to have Teresa share. And also know that when you do reach out, we try to respond as quickly as possible. So expect a call back from someone in the next week. And yeah, just I would ask that you would continue to bring people forward so that we can start identifying what they need and how we can best help them. So go ahead, Teresa.
The number is 989-374-8000.
And just to go along with that too, we find out about people through Sanford Strong webpage. We find out when we're talking to residents about what they're going to do with their property in the future. We find out from other people bringing their name forward. So in the last couple of weeks, we've probably learned of 10 or 15 more residents that could use help from long-term recovery group. And Katie, that group usually answers within 24 hours. I know she said it up to a week, but we've heard people who've heard from them the same night or the next morning. So it's a really great program that they have, and it fills in a lot of the gray spaces that aren't covered other places. So if you know of anyone, please reach out to us and let us know, because we are really concentrating on trying to help people who are still in the midst of getting in a home or getting some long-term plan in place.
I'm going to add something to that too, just for community members that may be afraid to reach out. I hear a lot of people who are not wanting to reach out because they think that somebody else could use help more than they can. Mm-hmm. And what I try to tell people is to not factor that in, that there will be enough to go around for everybody. So I would just like to reiterate that again, because I mean, I hear it every day. If you think that there are people that need help before you need help too, we can help everybody.
Great, thank you. Thanks. I'm going to stop sharing here. I know we're almost at the end of our time. I want to again say thank you to Dolores, to Teresa, and to Katie. And I know there are so many involved in this. And so huge thanks to all those who are a part of this effort and the role that you're playing. I did want to wrap up by again encouraging that if you need assistance, call the disaster case manager number. Don't you feel like this is an infomercial or something? But 989-374-8000. And again, 211 is an incredible resource and encourage you to utilize that as well. You can find this recording on reliefmidland.org. It'll be up there shortly in another day or so. You can link to this recording or on midlandfoundation.org as well. We will have it there as well. Relief Midland also has other resources that you can utilize, so I encourage you to look at that. And again, it's, as you've heard, this is a long recovery, but isn't it hopeful and encouraging to hear all that's taken place, what's underway now, and what's to come, just our visions for the future. So it was very exciting and really appreciate all that you shared. And I know we are coming up on really what's going to be an emotional time for our community as a whole. And actually, just to not to jump too far ahead, but our May call is going to focus on mental wellness, you know, when you come up on the anniversary of an event. But meanwhile, our next call will be March 11th, again, Thursday, March 11th, 10:30 to 11:30. And we will have the Four Lakes Task Force talking about and updating their work on the dams. So please register in advance for that. I want to say thank you to all who attended today, and special thanks to our presenters today. Really appreciate you being on this call, and more importantly, all that you're doing. So thank you all, and thanks for joining today, everyone.